Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. I'm here as always with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Mate, so much has changed in the 18 hours since we last saw each other via Zoom. Graham Potter has been sacked. Brendan Rodgers has been sacked. We've bought an Egyptian football club and we play Leicester tomorrow.
It's crazy, mate. It's really lucky actually that we were going to record the preview for this game almost in like a back-to-back, weren't we?
Yeah,
Straight after we did the Chelsea game, and it's a good thing we did because, as you say, mate, the landscape of this football game looks totally different. It looks totally different. I think from a preview side of things, like if we're actually going to be looking at Leicester, it might make it a little bit harder because it's such an unknown. But from a Villa point of view, as you say, mate, ZFC are part of the Villa football group. They've joined obviously ourselves, and then in the Primera, Vittoria. So there's now three of us, a little triarch, and I dare say, mate, there's probably a few more to come.
absolutely. Well, we know sort of Las Vegas Villains is in the pipelines, and I think they're aiming for an MLS entry expansion route in 2025. And I think that's more so for brand awareness, right? Being in the United States, it's a growing market, but there are so many benefits, and this isn't a political podcast, but obviously Brexit completely and utterly just makes signing players from abroad so much more difficult. So the fact that we've now got two routes, we've got one in Europe, in Vitoria, in Portugal, where players can come in and sort of gain work permits by playing there and all that kind of, and it makes it easier because we can't just go sort of straight to source now to take Enzo Fernandez as an example. Chelsea couldn't just necessarily go directly to River Plate, whoever as easily and sort of get all of that done now. It's made easier by the fact that he had a time at Benfica. And I mean, we saw it with Duran, right? We sort of signed the announcement of Duran was somewhat premature, wasn't it, mate? And it was sort of caveated with being subject to visa approval, which, as a young lad who didn't have many points in the visa system for playing first team football for his country and all this kind of stuff, it makes it a bit more difficult. So the fact that we're in two places where, as well, Portugal, obviously football culture there is massive. Same with Egypt. It's such a big country, and when you think of some of the greats of football, there are so many African players, but you would think just by the size of the continent, there should be more. Like the continent of Africa should be running football. So hopefully, we can be putting some sort of infrastructure in Egypt at least to sort of be hovering up all of the best sort of talent from Egypt and the surrounding nations. Because, Al Mohammadi obviously contributed to the club in a big way. Trezeguet, Mohamed Salah, one of the biggest players in world football, is obviously Egyptian. So there's a hotbed of talent in there, and it's, there's a potential gold mine that Villa can sort of explore and innovate and sort of grow with over the next 50 years. Really, it's a really exciting long-term project. This, isn't it, mate?
Yes, it is, mate. It is, and I'm not going to lie. In fact, you know what? I dare say there are too many Villa fans that were clued up on ZFC, formerly known as FC Mazda, prior to today. But if you wind your minds back all the way to December 2021, this is when we first announced partnership with what has become ZFC. It's interesting. I completely forgot about this, but we signed a partnership with them. What was that? 2.5 years ago, which would allow their players to hop between themselves in Villa, play in Europe and stuff like that. And then now it's gone that one step further, and this has been expanded and formalized as ZFC have become involved in this three-way collaborative sort of process between ourselves, between Vittoria Garage, and then ourselves, Aston Villa, obviously. And this is all part of NASF's V Sports Group, which all the three clubs, that's the umbrella term that all of them are under. this has come about. For, obviously, we know that Nasser Soros is Egyptian. His nephew is actually the chairman of this club, which I imagine is where the link has come from. So his nephew is Onsi Soros, the second son of Onsi Soros, who is again another member with a fair sized part in that family fortune. He's been the chairman of that football club. They currently play in the Egyptian second division. I haven't got too much more news than that, really. I like watching a lot of football. I've never watched Egyptian second division, but hey, I might find myself doing it. But they have been on a fair bit of a rise. In the last 10 years, they've made that. So they were down in the fourth division, got a back-to-back promotion into the third division the season later, and then they've been plugging away to get promotion. They did it once in 2019-20. They did get promoted to the Egyptian Premier League, but were then relegated, and they're fighting their way back up to the top tier of Egyptian football. It's an interesting sort of club. It's clearly one where, the Egyptian Premier League is kind of dominated by bigger clubs, like as it's Al Ahly are the biggest team in Egypt, 42 titles there. So there's potentially another spot vying for that throne. But in terms of my dive into ZFC, that's as much as I've got.
I wonder if they can rename to ZFC so as they fit the synergy with the V Sports.
Yeah.
If they've already changed the name once, maybe they'll do it again. It's really interesting, and I think there's ways, it's clearly inspired by the City Football Group model, right? And that is essentially, if I'm putting my cynical hat on, is a way that Manchester City can move about the money and sort of manipulate the finances in ways which make Manchester City look profitable. Allegedly, don't sue me. I'm sure that they've got their hands tied with the Premier League and UEFA right now. And I don't think anybody at Man City is listening to the Brother Fellow podcast. But, for take, for example, Aaron Mui, right? Everybody remembers him, Huddersfield Town. He is a product of the City Football Group network, right? Because he was at Melbourne City, who is obviously a club that Manchester City bought. They bought him, they loaned him out to Huddersfield, had a great time. Huddersfield then bought him for £20 million, which is actually what it cost them to buy Melbourne City FC. So it's, these things all sort of end up balancing themselves out in funny ways, right? And I believe it costs anywhere between 17 and 30 million for City to run their academy per season. So they only have to sell an Aaron Mui every year to make that. And we saw it this summer, right? They sold Bazunu. They sold, there was a few other lads as well off the top of my head who I can't remember, that they've taken like quite hefty transfer fees for, really, considering the lack of first team football. So, if not only is this a way for us to sort of get players onto the continent of Europe, but, maybe you can get players who are over the hill, like they did with Lampard as well, get him in at City and then get him out to New York, help the brand awareness there, all that kind of stuff. There's endless possibilities and there's endless reasons why this is a good thing and we should be excited. And if anything, just have faith in the ownership, because not that they've ever given us a reason not to be, but when billionaires come in and they're sort of playing with what is our football club and it means so much to us, for me at least, this is sort of reaffirming something that I knew already. I've always been fairly confident in the owners, but you don't want to sort of kiss the boots of billionaires blindly, but the intentions are good, it's long term, and this is one of many reasons at the moment right now, Dan, that we should be excited to be an Aston Villa fan, really.
Yeah, I think this is particularly a case where you have to put faith in the owners, because I was watching one of the more recent episodes of The Overlap with Gary Neville's sort of thing, where he goes around and he interviewed the UEFA president, Alexander Cheferin. And one of the things they spoke about in the midst of the Man United takeover, where Jim Ratcliffe, one of the people that's trying to buy the club, also has another football team, so Nice in France. And obviously the question was posed to Jeffrey, and it's like, what happens if United are drawing the same Europa League group, feasibly, as Nice? And, what happens then? And again, with Villa sort of pushing for Europe and Victoria and other clubs, if we're putting, even not necessarily in the same group, but in the same competition, what happens then? And Jeffrey did say that UEFA are looking into this. They're going to be introducing some legislation which will more strictly govern the rules around multi-club ownership and the potential problems that can arise with that. He said that, inherently things used in the right way, it can be a good thing for football. And as you see with our partnership out in Egypt, it can be used to benefit clubs that don't normally have access to improve their facilities and stuff like that, and that kind of funding. And so used in the right way, it is definitely a good thing. But there are potentially some problems coming down the pipeline, which UEFA are looking to act on, apparently. And so, yes, this is where you really need to have faith in the owners, because you imagine that this is something that they know as well, that their lawyers are aware of and stuff like that. And so for them to still go through with it when this is becoming an increasingly hot topic within football is interesting. And it's, with both of the people vying for that United ownership, the Qatari fund as well, that obviously own PSG. I mean, that's a really high scale, and you're going to run into several problems with that, you'd imagine. But it is interesting. It'll be interesting to see what kind of legislation we get on that and what rules are put in place. But to be honest with you, I don't think we're going to be meeting in any kind of competition with ZFC anytime soon.
No, you're not wrong, man. But I mean, pre-season in Egypt, you was there in the winter, mate.
Yeah.
Lovely place, right?
Yeah, it is, mate. It is. I tell you what, a pre-season tour in the summer would be, I think, for the particularly pasty lads, John McGinn is going to struggle out there. I'll be honest with you.
You're not wrong, man.
I mean, I'm excited. Let's get elbow on the ground. Let's get some content going on. This is going to be a lot of fun.
You're not wrong, man. That is absolutely. I'm excited. I'm excited. I just hope they've got good kits. Hopefully we can get some nice kits, because I looked at it. It kind of looked like it was just a sort of a plain black kit. There's not a lot on them online. It's kind of, everything that Dan.
I really like to dig
go is literally everything. Dan has given you everything that we know about ZFC. But yeah, mate. Obviously, we've got Leicester coming up now tomorrow, potentially today, depending on when people are listening to this podcast. Leicester's last win in the Premier League, mate, goes all the way back to the 11th of February. It was a 4-1 win at home to Tottenham. And funnily enough, the week before that, they beat a certain team called Aston Villa 4-2 at Villa Park. They've not won a game since. Yeah. They've been knocked out of the FA Cup at the hand of Blackburn. They've had some difficult games in there where they've played Arsenal, and I almost said Chelsea there, but that's not a difficult game, is it? As we well know. They Brentford, obviously, they lost recently to Crystal Palace. Brendan Rodgers is left by mutual consent. I don't know. There's just something that doesn't seem right with Leicester, and I don't think they were necessarily going to be one of the three teams that ends up going down, but they're certainly sort of in danger of going down. And I mean, now of all times, it seems like a really weird time to sort of part ways with Rodgers, really, doesn't it, mate?
Yeah, I mean, I found this with Chelsea as well. Is like, why would you wait the duration of a 2-week international break to wait for the first game back to sack your manager?
Yeah.
It's like, if you're that close to doing it, like, you look at Bayern Munich, they did it literally before a ball had even been kicked on the international stage, parted ways with Julian Nagelsmann. Thomas Tuchel is straight in. He gets, admittedly, I was going to say a week on the training pitch, but I mean, 90% of Bayern Munich squad would have been away on international duty, but, point stands, do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
And it's interesting that these clubs have waited until now to do that. And now, I mean, Brighton, the bearded Bruno from Brighton is going to be in the dugout at Stamford Bridge, and for Leicester, they're going back to a couple of guys who were the goalkeeper coaches. I have forgotten their names, which is not great, but they're going to be in charge.
It's not great for Leicester either, mate.
No, it's not. It's not. It's one where they're familiar with the club, because I believe they were standing managers when Claude Puel got sacked as well. And there's a couple of other stuff like that. So it's interesting. I do have a little bit of sympathy Brendan Rodgers. I won't lie. I don't think he's totally blameless, and I think it probably was coming to the time where you looked out to replace him. But, 2 fifth place finishes, which it's only really now when you look at the scale of that, to put Leicester City fifth in today's Premier League is some achievement. Obviously, you won them the FA Cup, the first ever FA Cup in their history, won the Community Shield as well, so 2 trophy lifts at Wembley, and he got to a European semi-final. The first 2 years under him were like the highest Leicester have ever been. And, you're working in football and in social as you do, mate, you'll remember that he really rang the bell last summer, didn't he, for new players? It's like, the squad has gone dry, it's gone stale. I remember there were some really strong words, and he said that they needed investment, but it never came. And one by one, you look at, I think Kasper Schmeichel is the perfect example. You let go of who is a club legend, really, and absolutely not like you didn't get someone in that wasn't very good. You didn't get anyone in at all, and Danny Ward, and all of it sort of culminated in this most recent sacking. And now here they are, managerless. I think it's really interesting to see who they turn to. Sky Sports are saying that it looks like it's going to be a short-term appointment, possibly. But the focus is on this game against Villa. And interestingly, Rob Dawson of Sky also said that the result of this game is likely to have an impact on the speed of the managerial move, which all sounds really odd to me. But anyway,
if they win, are they just gonna stick with the interim guys?
Yes, this is what I mean. And so it's one where as a Villa fan, you'd like to sit here and say, if only they'd have waited a few more days, that would have been great. But you've got Adam Sandler and Mike Sowell. There you go, Adam Sandler and Mike Sowell. That's who will be in the dugout for Leicester tomorrow. And from a preview point of view, it makes it really difficult, doesn't it, mate?
No, absolutely, mate, it does. And listen, they're sat in 19th on 25 points, right? But as West Ham proved the other day, they scored a goal and they've dragged themselves up to 14th. And so, I do genuinely think there's too much quality in that Leicester team to go down. I think Bournemouth will end up going down, and I think it'll be Leeds as well, along with Southampton. I think Southampton's a given at this point. It would be. Do they go for Graham Potter? I think that's probably one of the things that has been bandied about. I think what the difficulty is now, mate, is, as you said, they've sacked the manager. There's 10 games to go. We're in the running, and there's no good managers out there, or there's no managers that would certainly consider you right now at this moment in time. Javi Gracia obviously ended up going to Leeds, didn't he? Roy Hodgson got himself back in the saddle at Crystal Palace. Lopetegui went to Wolves a long time ago. The only other appointment that they could possibly make right now that would sort of almost guarantee them staying up is probably Moyes, but obviously he's still in the job at West Ham and also in the relegation battle with West Ham as well. There's no sort of safe bets there. I know
Isn't it interesting that the age of the dinosaur is really over? We've had 13 managerial sackings this season, and there's been no Bruce Allardyce. It really seems like clubs have turned away from that, doesn't it?
It's a good thing though. I don't want to see Alan Pardew in the job. I think we're lucky as well that McLaren's obviously Ten Hag's assistant, because I imagine he'd have been banded about for one of the jobs as well. I keep seeing loads of. There was a tweet I saw the other day that was scientists predict humans will be living to 150 years old, and it was a tweet. Crystal Palace announcing Roy Hodgson as their interim manager in 2088 or something like that.
I did see that.
But yeah, it leaves Leicester in a really sticky predicament. But I think, looking at their fixtures, right? So, the 10 games that Leicester have got left, they play us, Bournemouth, City, Wolves, Leeds, Everton, Fulham, Liverpool, Newcastle, West Ham. They have to beat Bournemouth, they have to beat Wolves, they have to beat West Ham, they have to beat Leeds. And that should keep them up. And I think they probably could. I don't see them getting anything from us just in the form that we're in. I think, when you look back, I was speaking with my dad last night. I think the only time in the Unai Emery era where I was sort of worried, not worried, but there was some sort of cause for concern on players and how long the sort of adjustment period would take for some of the players, was the Leicester game. That's the only game that we've played in where I don't necessarily think we were bad, but we got bamboozled pretty quickly, didn't we? And we just didn't manage to recover. And Booba looked like a rabbit in headlights because he gave away the ball for 2 of the goals as well, didn't he? If my memory serves me correctly. That's the only time I've gone, oh fucking hell, like we've got some job on our hands. But we've come on so much since that point, mate, that we're coming into this game and I'm feeling extremely confident. And it'd have been nice if Brendan was still at the helm, given the poor results as of late. But I don't think there's anything that even these assistants can do. That I've already forgotten their names. I'm sorry.
No, don't worry.
I don't think there's anything that they can do in a day to, because I know they've been involved in the club and stuff like that, and it's always hard to gauge. But like, when you think back to our 3-0 win at Brentford, right? Aaron Danks, the thing that Danks had a couple of things sort of go for him, in the fact that obviously he was very familiar with all the players. He himself is looking to get himself into management. He's a fairly accomplished coach as it is, from his history that we spoke about on previous podcasts, mate. And ultimately, he came into this game with nothing to prove, nothing to lose, everything to prove, all this kind of stuff. And he played. He set us up in a formation which suited the players and actually gave them instructions. Right? If they're sending out goalkeeper coaches, I don't know. I don't know if it's gonna. I don't know if they can danks it up. Do you know what I mean? Maybe this is me being ignorant, but it's not very often that these changes ever come off. Think of Eric Black, man. Do you remember that? Eric Black, he never went down. That was pretty grim, weren't it? Them games that he had at the helm.
Timmy Sherwood didn't do a bad job, but that's about as good as I've got, mate. It's interesting, and I'm glad to wait. I think that's a good thing. Yeah, that's a good thing. I think we are playing really well on the road ourselves. Leicester are proper stinking as well at the King Power. They've lost 5 of their last 7 Premier League home games. That's more than they had in their previous 19 at home. It's not good form for there. And against us as well, they haven't scored in either of their last 2 Premier League home games against us. Only against Man United between 2000 and 2002, and Man City between 2020 and 2021, have they failed to score in 3 consecutive home games in the competition against one particular opposition. I think, obviously, they're not a side that we have a particularly great record against away from home, because by and large, since we got promoted, they've been a good team in this league. They've been a very good team, and they've been sort of emulating what we've always been aiming to do since we came up, is to get up and ruffle the feathers of the established and really make a push for European competitions and stuff like that. And I mean, they've done, on the whole, pretty well at it. This is the only season where really they've struggled consistently. So we have only won 2 of our 13 Premier League away games against Leicester. That's in Premier League history. We won 5-0 there in January 2004 and 1-0 there in October 2020. I believe that isn't including the win that we got in the semi-final of the Carabao Cup. Freddie
Gilbert goal was
scored. Yeah, and that was that's another game that we have won on the road there. So it's not all doom and gloom, but there are some, skeletons in the closet, that we're going to have to get out and address and make sure that we do that. But Unai's done a really good job of that. Literally, I was looking back through our thumbnails the other day, mate, when I was uploading the Chelsea post match, and it's literally like Ollie Watkins breaks history, Ollie Watkins sets a new record, Unai Emery did and it's like one by one, this team is just breaking down barriers, all these roadblocks that have previously hampered Villa teams. We're just smashing through at the moment. And so, hey, if we've learned anything during this podcast in the 5 odd years, mate, or whatever it is we've been doing it's to never go into a game too confident with the Villa. But I think we've never had a team that we can believe in quite like this one.
You're not wrong, man. You're not wrong. And talk about exercising your demons. I was looking at, I've just seen a tweet from AVFC Stato, so shout out to Dale. on this one. Unai Emery has lost his last 3 Premier League games against Leicester, and that is the only team in England, in English football, that he's lost the most games to consecutively. And the only other teams that he's lost more consecutive games to are Barcelona, Real Madrid, and Sevilla. We know Unai, as I said, we know this is Unai's record-breaking Tricky Villains, and he had a similar record, he with the sort of the third kick curse and the away games and all this kind of stuff. He's breaking records, man, and I wouldn't worry too much. I feel sorry for Dale because he's probably posted about 15 tweets today about sort of bad records that we sort of hold at Leicester. And it's never fun to do research when the records are that bad. But listen, I'm feeling confident, mate. Before we go, score predictions from yourself and I'm gonna go with a 1-0 win again. I think we'll get the job done, and I think we're good value for another clean sheet.
You took it away from me, mate. You took it away from me. So given the variety of the spice of life, I also think we're going to win. But I'll double your prediction, mate, and I'll go with 2-0.
You know what, mate? I would be absolutely buzzing. I'd be absolutely buzzing. As long as Kelechi Iheanacho doesn't score, I'm all good. And as long as if we keep the Vardy chance to a minimum as well, the more we chant about his wife being a slag, the more goals he'll score. That's just how we work.
There's a direct correlation.
Yeah, there is.
It's the goals he scores, like direct correlation, guys.
You're not wrong, man. You're not wrong. Guys, let us know your score predictions in the comments down below. If you didn't know as well, we've got a link tree in the description that Dan ever so kindly made, and it's got all the links to our fantasy football, our Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Heart of the Holte, Instagram at VillaFillerPod. You can follow them for more short clips and reactions and all sorts. And you will be hearing from us pretty much straight after the game, I'm thinking, Dan. I think are we good to go tomorrow?
Yes, yeah, I'll be around tomorrow night.
Perfect. So you guys will be getting a Villa Filler tomorrow. You absolutely love to see it. When the games come thick and fast, that is when we enjoy doing it most. We're in the running. Make sure you subscribe if you're not subscribed, because there's 45% of you guys who are watching this podcast on YouTube right now aren't subscribed. So if you subscribed, it would make mine and Dan's life a hell of a lot easier. So yeah, like, comment, subscribe, and I'm the Villa.